This is our family, and this is our van life adventure. If you'd like to follow on with all of our adventures, don't forget to like and subscribe. 3 weeks ago, we got back from our biggest van life adventure yet. After 3 months travelling the Scandinavian bloc, we've spent the last few weeks just settling into van life UK and figuring out what that looks like for us. Now we feel like we've worked out some of the kinks and found our feet.
You okay?
We're ready to have a chat. So now that we have settled in and we found our feet, we feel like we've had a bit of time to process everything we sort of experienced and went through and learnt on our big Scandi trip in the summer, and we wanted to spend a bit of time sharing that with you guys in case anybody ever wanted to take a trip to the Scandi block in a van themselves. So our first part today, we've got some tips for you. So these are some things that we learnt.
Tip 1.
Tip 1.
Shopping.
Shopping.
Yes.
Okay.
Shopping. Food.
Things
that feed us.
So in Norway, the supermarkets, everything's expensive in Norway, but particularly the supermarkets are expensive as well. I went out there thinking that it was kind of eating out and drinking was expensive. That's not true. Everything is. So for you to know, the best supermarkets to visit if you are trying to save some cash is Kiwi and Rema 1000. They are the best supermarkets. They are the cheapest supermarkets you can go to. You also should know that in Norway there's less choice that you might get in the UK, and in some of the other countries that we visited. We really felt that there was a lot less kind of choice in terms of vegetables, but also in terms of, for me as a vegan, there was a lot less choice. And I found it really hard when we first got to Norway. That was not true of the other countries we visited, but it was really noticeable in Norway.
So tip number 2 is...
stock your cupboards, stock your fridges, stock your freezers, especially if you've got anything specific that you really like. If we were to go back again, I would stock as much tofu as I possibly could. Silken and just standard fridge block tofu. I'd put it in the freezer and I would just stock my freezer and fridge with as much tofu as I could get in. And I would also stock up the boys' milk. The boys like to have the Alpro growing up soya milk. I thought I'd bought a lot.
that was hard to get.
But I couldn't get it. It was really, really tricky. I don't think we managed to get it back again until Belgium, did we, on the way back? It was Belgium or Holland.
Holland, I think it was in Holland.
Holland. So we went through Belgium, Holland, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, back down through Denmark, Germany, and we couldn't get any more until Holland. So I would recommend, if you've got specific things you want to take or specific things you really like to have, stock up.
Yeah.
Before you go. And if you've got any way of storing them, then store them and take them with you, because it can be tricky, especially if you like certain brands. Yeah. Stock your fridge, freezer and your cupboard.
So moving on to tip number 3, I'm going to say solar. If you rely heavily on solar, then Norway, the time period we went,
which was August. We were peak summer months, August.
We found that our solar didn't produce nearly enough to keep us going, really. Because if the sun, even if the sun was out and it wasn't overcast or cloudy, you were more often than not in the shadow of a mountain or a cliff. You know, you're just surrounded by sheer rock face, waterfalls, and although the view was great and the atmosphere was awesome, it just meant literally solar struggled.
As magical as the landscape was, it did make it hard for the solar to work. There were often days when our solar wasn't registering any sun until about midday.
Yeah.
And it was setting early. So, and if it's not the mountains, it's the rain. The cloud cover's really thick in Norway and it rains a lot.
Luckily for us, we were driving fairly frequent,
so it keeps
so
your batteries,
we got our batteries topped up. But yeah.
But no, if you're going to be off grid, you're going to want your generator working, potentially driving more,
or plugging in,
or as we did, plug onto campsites when you need to. So we made sure that once a week we were plugging in on a campsite.
To top us up.
Campsites do almost all include electricity in their fees. I think that's probably why, because the solar's not very effective in Norway. And then I think our final tip is register for your e-pass.
Yes.
Or your auto tag before you go. There are a lot of toll roads in Norway, a lot, and there's not like booths for you to pay. So
it's
what I would,
automated.
it's all automated. So there's two ways you can do it. You can register for an auto tag. If you want to do that, you have to do it before you get there. What we did was we registered for an e-pass.
Once we were there,
it's really easy, really straightforward, and all it means is you kind of, they kind of invoice you at the end of.
It's all app based, so you download the app.
They invoice you at the end of the month, and then you just log on and you pay your invoice at the end of the month.
I mean, they do take the money automatically as well, which we found out. We paid the first bill early, but you have to put your card details in, and then on the second month
they will collect the money.
They take their money. But yeah, it's kind of a stress-free way. It's
an easy way of doing it because there are so many toll roads, there's so many toll points, and where there's all these signs where it's like toll, 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 I don't think you get charged every single time you go through one of them, because I think we would have been spending hundreds. It wasn't as much as that. One thing though, don't go the wrong way
and
like
go on
we
a toll
did.
Road. Because there's no sympathy,
There's no sympathy.
Go
we went the wrong way. We only went halfway through this tunnel because we were going the wrong way. So we went round a roundabout inside one of the tunnels and went back. We still got charged. And it was something like £35, wasn't it?
About £35.
So try not to make a mistake. If you do, you do. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So those are probably our top tips.
Probably tips, to get around Norway.
For getting around Norway.
So moving on from our tips, looking back at our trip. Is there anything you would change?
I think the only thing I would change was that I would have brought the whole trip, if I could have moved it forward by 2 weeks, I would have. Because being in Norway, once September hit, I wasn't prepared for how hard and fast sort of Norway's autumn was going to arrive. And I think it kind of became September and it rained almost constantly for about a week. And then we had one good day, really, one and a bit good days before the weather turned again. And, you know, I knew the weather in Norway wasn't fantastic, but we'd been to Scotland early in the year and I figured, you know, we weren't in Scotland in summer, so it probably wouldn't be too bad. But just how much it rains in Norway is a lot. And I think, you know, it might be okay if it's just 2 adults in a van or 1 adult in a van, but I think when you've got kids in a small space like this and either your clothes are wet or your shoes are wet,
you're just cold
and think it's not that much fun. So I think I would have liked it if we could have left Norway before September arrived. But in order to do that, we would have had to shift the whole trip forward by about 2 weeks. And I think that would probably be the only thing that I would be like, that's what I would change.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. In terms of changing much else, you know, you go there and experience what you experience. But yeah, it would have been a slightly different experience had you gone that bit earlier. So yeah, unless you've got a really good setup and you're willing to...
And you don't mind getting wet. And you've got kids that don't mind getting wet. Because that's the big kicker, isn't it? We can cope with it, but kids struggle a bit more.
Yeah. Cool.
So even though there were bits that maybe we would have changed if we could, we're now looking at maybe our best and worst bits of the whole trip.
Let's get the worst bits out of the way first.
Worst bits first. So for me, there's there's two bits really that were kind of my worst bits. One was the night we were really, really hassled in a van in Norway, to the point where we moved and then called the police when the harassment didn't end. That was awful. Nice. And we've had incidents in the van before at night, but I think the thing that really tipped it over to make it a lot worse was that Leo was awake and upset, and that was horrible.
Yeah.
That was really horrible and really upsetting. Yeah, that was crap. And then I think maybe my second worst bit was in Holland when the tyre went wrong. On its own, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but part of the problem was we'd had so many issues on this trip. We'd had a fuel leak, we'd had an oil leak, which I've shared in other videos, but there was more than that. We had a smashed skylight, we had water that wasn't coming on properly. Our batteries were struggling because of the lack of solar, so we were struggling with the heating on some days. So there was a lot of technical issues. So then right in that last bit,
we'd gone through all that.
We'd gone through all that, and we were
just
like,
wanted 1 week, just last week. It
wasn't like we were just in the last bit, and we'd like made sure we'd got to Belgium and Holland, because we just Amsterdam. On the way out we just drove through Holland. We didn't even stop at all, because we were saying to ourselves, it's okay, because on the way back we're going to take some more time so that we can explore Holland properly. And then we got there and the tyre went flat at like the worst time on a Friday night, because everything was shut. And then the garage was all shut at midday on Saturday. And I just felt like I was just watching that time.
We lost 3 days,
and I'd had so much at 4
days. We lost 4 days stuck while we had to wait for the tyre to resolve.
Just watched this time just disappear. And it wasn't like on its own, it's not a big thing, but it was just at the end of that trip with having
1 day.
We had 1 day in Holland.
Where we thought we was going to have 5 or 6.
I was gutted about that. Yeah, I was really gutted about that. That really upset me. What about you? Any worst bits?
I suppose just the way the weather hampered us so relentlessly on the back end of Norway. Really, once the weather turned, it was just rain and cloud after rain.
And I know England had a lot of rain as well. So I think, partly rain was a problem for a lot of people this summer.
But when you live in a van and you want to be outside, it just made it very difficult to get outside.
We spend so much time outside in the van. And it wasn't just at the end either. We had storm hands on the way out as well, which meant that, and Norway really suffered with storm hands. So by the time we arrived, they'd had landslides, a dam burst, there was road closures, things were flooded when we were trying to get to them. So yeah, the weather was tough.
So that's our 3 worst bits right there.
Yeah, the weather was tough on this trip. Best bits.
What was my best bit? I suppose the day we went to the Lego house.
Yeah, the Lego house was great.
That was the Lego house was really good. And we spent all day there. Good park up, right round the corner.
Highly recommend the Lego house. It is fantastic.
I think it opened at 10, but we got there at 11.
No, I think it opened at 10:30. I got us one of the earliest. No, it opened at 11, and we got there at about 11:15, 11:30.
Okay, so we were there at a good time in the morning.
And I got us one of the earliest slots to get in.
We were there all day till closing. They kicked us out.
I was exhausted, and we still didn't do everything. We still didn't go on everything that we could there.
Yeah.
Or do everything that we could.
So that was my favourite day, because the boys had a good day.
Yeah, Lego house was fantastic.
Just an unreal experience, really.
And I think my best bit was Boyabreen Glacier. Our stop at Boyabreen Glacier. I loved it. It was just such a beautiful place. I really just loved being there, and I think it's probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. And the other thing that I liked, which wasn't just exclusive to Norway, this is kind of a Scandi block thing in Denmark, Norway and Sweden, is that you can have fires.
Yes, every park up.
Like in Denmark, loads of the public parks have fire pits, so you can have fires in fire pits. And Norway, they may not have fire pits, but they still basically allow you to have fires everywhere, and it's just I love that thing.
It's just normal there. Like,
yeah, it's so nice when you
chilling.
you kind of spent a lot of your day outside, and you've been exploring, and then you come back and you have hot drinks and marshmallows by the fire. It's just awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Those were definitely my favourite things. Oh, one more. I had another favourite thing. There were lots of good bits to this trip. Might have sounds like there's lots of rubbish, but there wasn't. Wild swimming. I loved the wild swimming. And I didn't get to do it in Norway. It was just too cold for me. I'm not tough enough. But Denmark and Sweden, I did wild swimming, and it was great. It was really, really nice.
Yeah, just...
But Boyerbreen Glacier comes top. Definitely.
Top. So that's how we listed it. The outside, glaciers, waterfalls, and the Lego house.
Then the Lego house, yeah.
You know,
but we definitely recommend a trip to the Scandi block.
do it, yeah.
Just go prepared with waterproofs.
Thank you for watching our video.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Goodbye.